You look at your bank account and sigh. No matter how many crystals you carry or how many affirmations you repeat, the promise of abundance slips through your fingers. I have said those sentences to rooms full of people. I have heard them back in private messages and confessions. The sound of that sigh is a diagnostic tone to me now. Today I want to name a specific tribe of minds. People who believe everything is energy and who spend their lives trying to make the universe do their work. They build altars of intention and then avoid the ledger. They craft vision boards and then fail to answer job offers. They teach classes on vibration and then ignore overdue bills. This is not a judgment from a distance. It is a clinical observation born of years of watching the same script replay. I will give you a psychological and spiritual X-ray of this mindset. I will show how their internal story creates a loop that feels spiritual but functions like self-punishment. I will point to the precise mental moves that keep them stuck in scarcity. And I will hand you the first, concrete internal move to break that loop. This is intimate, blunt, and pragmatic. I will be compassionate and accusatory in the same breath. The truth is sharp because it needs to be. You may hear yourself in what I describe. You may hate me for it. Or you may finally feel seen, because someone named the contradiction you have been defending. Do you recognize yourself as someone who tries to manipulate the universe energetically, while your bank statement tells a different story? If yes, pay attention. The scene you just heard is only the surface. Underneath it lies a pattern. In the next section, I will dissect that pattern like a clinician. I will describe how they see themselves and what they actually do when money shows up. Keep listening. The diagnosis starts now. That moment at the bank signaled something I have learned to read at a glance. When someone treats ritual like substitute labor, their mind has already rearranged priorities. They start with a story about being chosen. They end by avoiding the things that actually create cash flow. This image repeats. It repeats until their life narrates the opposite of what they claim to want. First layer is image. These people present themselves as spiritually advanced. They use language as armor. They say words like alignment, vibration, and surrender. They wear a particular kind of calm. It is a calm that often covers fear. To the outside world, they look airy and unbothered. Inside, they nurse a quiet panic about money. The narrative they repeat is simple. Higher awareness makes money a non-issue. So when money becomes an issue, they feel shame, not curiosity. That shame pushes them deeper into spiritual practices. The practices soothe momentarily. The bills remain. Second layer is private story. When I ask them what they tell themselves at night, the answers repeat. They say, if I truly vibrate, the universe will provide. Or, money is lower frequency. I refuse to stoop. Or, I am beyond craving. The universe will show me the timing. These are not just slogans. They are coping scripts. They function as permission not to plan. They license avoidance. A ritual becomes an escape hatch from responsibility. Watch how this plays out in small behaviors. They avoid statements and passwords. They cancel meetings that pay. They spend more on tools of manifestation than on courses that would grow their skills. They hoard signs and arguments that confirm their worldview. They scroll for synchronicities instead of sending an invoice. Each small avoidance is a choice. Each choice compounds. Over months, that compounding yields the visible problem: debt, missed opportunities, stalled projects. I have sat with dozens of people who held this pattern. Let me paint two clinical portraits to make it concrete. The first is Mara. She looked like the image of success in spiritual circles. She had a bright Instagram feed filled with meditation photos and moon rituals. She taught workshops about raising your vibration. She also had 2 years of unpaid invoices stacked in a folder. When the landlord texted, she lit a green candle and did a prosperity visualization exercise. She felt calm and sanctified. The text from the landlord never paused. The summons arrived. The second portrait is Daniel. He considered money vulgar and claimed he wanted freedom. He rejected a promotion that required administrative tasks. He said he did not want to sell out. He spent hours researching whether his soul contract included financial dryness. He read signs and numbers that he believed indicated a new income stream. He used that interpretation as proof there was no need to apply for other roles. A year later, the role he had refused required skills he no longer possessed. He had lottery-like hope, but no plan. Both Mara and Daniel believed the same core myth. They believed that energy effort alone is enough. The universe, they thought, would translate their inner state into bank deposits without their physical involvement. That belief protects ego. It makes people feel superior, but it is functionally bankrupt when rent is due. Now I want to separate what they say from what they do. Publicly, they declare trust. Privately, they often panic. Publicly, they rebuke materialism. Privately, they binge on the next ritual product because they need the dopamine hit. This split becomes a system. The ritual gives immediate relief. The relief reduces the pressure to act, and that reduction becomes a habit. Here is the pattern in action during money events. Someone receives a late notice. The first response is anxiety. The second response is ritual. The third response is relief. The fourth response is no material resolution. Over time, the mind learns that ritual equals resolution, so it chooses ritual again and again. The brain is efficient. It favors the path of least resistance. If your path of least resistance rewards feeling better instead of actually solving problems, you will build a life of unresolved deficits. We must also look at the social role. Many of these people occupy positions where showing the right posture matters. They lead groups. They teach. For them, admitting to financial struggle feels like an existential threat. The fear of losing status is added to the shame of being poor. So they double down on spiritual identity to protect self-image. The identity becomes defense. Action becomes risk of exposure. At this point, you might ask, are they lazy? No. Many of them work hard at spiritual labor. Their days can be crowded with activity. The problem is misallocated effort. They invest energy in practices that produce inner states, but not external traction. They mistake inner motion for external progress. I often say to them, you are working very hard at being ready. You are not working at getting paid. Now I want to name the cognitive posture that holds this whole system together. It is a posture of magical bypassing. Magical bypassing is the tendency to use spiritual thinking to avoid facing basic human needs. It is the move of elevating principles above practicalities. It is the insistence that inner alignment substitutes for external competence. And it is rewarded by social scenes that value intention over execution. The result is a culture that applauds the right posture while the person with real bills suffers in silence. This is not only a financial problem. It becomes a moral and relational one. When money is neglected, relationships strain. Promises to partners are broken. Dependents are left vulnerable. Friendships shift from mutual to symbiotic. The person who refuses to look at finances often rationalizes that their sensitivity makes them unsuitable for mundane tasks. That rationalization becomes cruelty to those who rely on them. There is also a generational element I see. Some people inherit a family script that frames material concerns as corrupting. Their parent may have said, "Money changes people," and that sentence becomes a dogma. The child internalizes a choice: either protect spiritual integrity or accept the stain of material success. Many choose protection. They may then unconsciously punish themselves with scarcity as proof of their purity. Scarcity becomes martyrdom. Now, I need to be blunt. This way of being is not noble. It is avoidance dressed as virtue. And avoidance compounds. It is slow damage that looks like spiritual maturity to those inside the group. To the outside world, it looks like denial. But inside, the person feels righteous. They have surrendered to an idea of non-attachment that secretly serves their fear of responsibility. When I talk to people stuck in this pattern, I use a different language. I ask about small measurable actions. I ask whether they have an up-to-date bank statement open. I ask if they have a list of unpaid invoices. We started with one. Send 3 proposals to local studios to host her sound bath. She did it with terror. 2 studios said yes. In a month, she had a consistent slot and a small guaranteed income. Her rituals did not change. Her relationship with money did. She did not need to abandon the spiritual work to create material stability. This change happened because she replaced ritual as resolution with ritual plus action. The ritual remained, but was paired with a concrete step. The anxiety still visited, but it had less power. The universe, as she describes it now, did not suddenly open. Instead, opportunities that were previously invisible became visible. That visibility came because she was looking. By the way, if this conversation is landing for you, and you want to see more of this kind of analysis, I want to ask for one small favor. I'm building a community and aiming for 1,000 subscribers. If you found this meaningful, consider subscribing and leaving a comment with your city or country. It helps others find this work, and you will help me keep producing honest content. Thank you. This is not a sales pitch. It is a breathing request from someone trying to change the conversation. Back to the diagnosis. The contradiction is structural. The person believes in abundance but tolerates behaviors that produce scarcity. They interpret scarcity as a test. They read lack as spiritual purification. This reading is self-reinforcing. It creates a loop where scarcity is both the effect and the justification for the pattern. I want to detail the typical behavioral signs. They overvalue symbolic acts. They undervalue transactional competence. They confuse visibility for value. They seek external validation through testimonials and endorsements while ignoring the daily operations that actually create revenue. They have a library of evidence of spiritual experiences and almost no documentation of cash flow. When a real financial decision appears, they delegate it to fate. Fate, unsurprisingly, does not file taxes. Then there is the emotional economy. Gratitude is practiced as a substitute for problem solving. Gratitude for what will one day be is used as a coping mechanism. Gratitude is powerful, but when it replaces planning, it becomes anesthetic. If you are grateful that money is coming tomorrow, but you have not made any moves to ensure that, you are comforting yourself with hope. Now imagine a person who has been practicing this pattern for 5 years. The habit network is thick. Their friends validate the stance. Their social feed confirms it. Their bank account reflects neglected choices. The paradox grows into a story they tell at retreats. I surrendered, and the universe taught me patience. That story protects them from the shame of missed payments. The story is a social defense, not a strategy. At the end of this diagnostic section, I want to leave you with clarity. This is a pattern you can recognize, name, and interrupt. Recognition is the first radical step. Naming stops the unconscious momentum. When you can see that lighting another candle is a predictable part of a loop that ends in missed obligations, you gain the option to do something different. In the next part 1 will map the internal subtypes inside this tribe. I will paint portraits of 4 common ways this fear disguises itself. You will likely see yourself in at least one. I will show daily scenes for each subtype. You will notice the same mechanics across very different personalities. That recognition will make the problem less mystical and more solvable. Keep listening. The portraits will make this diagnosis personal. Within the tribe I described, the same fear wears different faces. The pattern is the same, but the costume changes. I separate 4 subtypes because naming them helps you locate yourself. Each subtype has its own rituals, defenses, and blind spots. Each one trains the universe to respond in a particular way. None is innocent. All are survivable once named. The first subtype is the compulsive visualizer. On the surface, they are harmless and hopeful. They make vision boards with a zeal that borders on artistry. They practice long visualizations every morning. They can describe, with cinematic detail, the house, the account balance, the applause. Their conviction is intoxicating to others. Yet their life lacks a simple correspondence. The intensity of visualization is not matched by the intensity of execution. A typical day for a compulsive visualizer looks polished. They wake early and spend 30 to 60 minutes in guided visualization. They light a candle, imagine a check arriving, write affirmations. They then open social media to check the manifestation accounts of those they follow. Hours pass. They plan plans. They research business ideas without committing. If a paying opportunity appears, they may hesitate, waiting for a sign that it is aligned. At night, they update the vision board. A year passes and the board is more beautiful, the bank account approximately the same. Their belief root is simple. Clarity of vision equals material arrival. The internal story they tell is that if they can see clearly, the universe will do the rest. This belief allows them to avoid messy implementation. It also rewards them with dopamine. Planning becomes creative exercise instead of commitment. The consequence is chronic near misses. They feel like they are almost there. Almost becomes a psychic trap. If you are a visualizer, hear me, visual clarity is useful, but it must be married to traction. The universe is not a vending machine that dispenses cash for aesthetic focus. If you identify as a visualizer, the first practical move is a tiny accountability contract. For every visualization session, schedule one measurable action within 24 hours. That action breaks the hypnotic loop of feeling like it's enough. The second subtype is the reality fugitive. They moralize scarcity. They elevate non-attachment into proof of superior evolution. Their day is counter-narrative. They say they don't care about money, as if that indifference is proof of worth. But their bank statements disagree. They avoid budgets and scoff at spreadsheets. They treat material chores as stains on spirituality. A typical day for a reality fugitive includes public postures of detachment. They speak with disdain about money worries. They may turn down clear financial advice because it seems too dense. They create moral narratives about minimalism that mask fear. When a bill arrives, they perform transcendence rituals, long baths, breathwork, reframing. Those moments feel profound. The bills remain. Their core belief is that caring about money is corrupt. The internal story is, if I show need, I will be less pure. This story produces a slow erosion. Relationships strain because the fugitive expects others to absorb practical labor. They may romanticize suffering as a path to authenticity. The consequence is not nobility, it is neglect. If you see yourself in the fugitive, the clinical invitation is to translate ethics into skill. Non-attachment can coexist with competence. You can hold a spiritual ideal and also file taxes. Practice naming one mundane task you will complete this week. Do it as a devotion. That action reframes competence as part of your spiritual discipline, not its enemy. The third subtype is the energy alchemist. They turn the external world into a shopping list of spiritual objects. Crystals, oils, ritual kits, courses, and talismans accumulate. Their homes become altars of possibility. They measure alignment by the quantity of tools they possess. They believe the right object or ritual will complete the circuit and call money into being. A day for an alchemist is filled with acquisition. They buy a new crystal for abundance. They enroll in a webinar that promises manifestation formulas. They create elaborate rituals to charge objects. They spend weekends curating their collection. Each purchase gives them a temporary hit of belief and community. The problem is the ratio. They spend more on tools than they earn from the outcomes those tools purport to create. Their belief is transactional. The right object equals the right result. The internal story is that matter itself can be harnessed if it is the correct matter. This belief often masks a weakness, an avoidance of messy human work. Buying tools feels like action. It is simpler than negotiating contracts, issuing invoices, or learning how to sell. The material consequence is often ironic. The alchemist's spending on tools increases their financial pressure. They then justify more purchases as charging the situation. It's a debt spiral disguised as devotion. If you are an alchemist, the move is audit. Inventory your purchases. It gives the person an illusion of control through interpretation. But the cost is paralysis. If you are a decoder, you must translate signs into experiments. Use what you perceive as signal as a hypothesis, not an injunction. Act on the hypothesis within a set time frame. If the action fails, revise. If you keep waiting for a flawless sign, time will erode your options. Now consider how these 4 types overlap. A person can be a visualizer and an alchemist at the same time. Another may move from decoder in youth to fugitive later in life. The underlying engine is the same, avoidance disguised as spirituality. The specific behavior determines the pathway of self-sabotage. Across all 4 types, there is a common inner economy. The pattern starts with anxiety about real needs. That anxiety is soothed by ritual or reinterpretation. The relief is physiologically rewarding. The mind learns a rule. Feeling safe equals no material work. That rule hardens into habit. Habits shape identity. Identity resists change. This is why change must be tactical. You cannot shame your way out of this. You must restructure habits so the brain learns a new reward pathway. I often work with clients by mapping an energetic action pair. For each spiritual practice they love, we attach a micro-task that moves money or competence forward. The ritual remains sacred. The action becomes part of the ritual. Let me tell you about 2 people who moved out of a subtype and into agency. The first is Sophia, a classic alchemist. She loved collecting abundance tools and had a closet full of them. She was mortified to discover she had spent 2 months' rent on ritual accoutrements. She felt shame, and shame triggered more purchases. We designed an experiment. For 30 days, every time she felt the urge to buy a new tool, she had to offer a 30-minute skill session to a friend for free. She did this. In the exchange, she realized she could charge for what she already did. 6 weeks later, she led a paid workshop. The closet still held the tools. Her relationship to them changed. They were props, not solutions. The second is Marcus, a decoder. He waited for signs and ended up waiting for life. We turned his code hunting into a testing process. Every sign he perceived became a hypothesis. He set a rule: test the hypothesis within 7 days, with 1 concrete step. The rule forced him into action. He lost some cosmic certainty, but he gained outcomes. Within months, he found a steady client because he tried, failed, revised, and persisted. These changes were not dramatic overnight miracles. They were incremental and messy. Yet they built competence. Competence breeds confidence. Confidence changes the stories you tell yourself. The loop that once yielded scarcity began to yield traction. One structural truth ties the 4 subtypes together. All these internal scripts teach the universe what to deliver. If you repeatedly show you prefer ritual to execution, the environment responds in kind. The universe is not punishing you. It is mirroring choices. That mirror is brutal but useful. It tells you exactly what to change. If you recognized yourself in one of these portraits, do not turn away in guilt. Naming is an invitation, not a condemnation. You have been playing a role that protected something. The question is what you want to protect now: the feeling of spiritual identity or the ability to materially sustain your life and work. In closing this section, I want to give a small practical test. Pick one action today that directly affects money. Make it tiny and measurable. For a visualizer, send one proposal. For a fugitive, check your bank statement and write down reality without moral commentary. For an alchemist, list the last 3 purchases and assign a financial purpose to each. For a decoder, commit to testing one sign-driven hypothesis within 7 days. Do it and mark the calendar. This tiny commitment is a crack in the pattern. It invites evidence. The next part will not be comfortable. I will name the invisible law that ties all these subtypes together. I will explain why ritual without action trains the universe to keep giving you what you already tolerate. I will show the exact mechanism that turns spiritual practices into self-sabotage. If you want to break the loop, You need to understand the rule the mind follows. That rule has a name, and it will make everything that came before feel inevitable and solvable. Keep listening. The law will feel like exposure, and exposure is the first step to change. I want to take the subtypes I described and put them under a single lens. What they share is not a technique. It is a structure of attention. It is a way the mind interprets lack and then chooses relief over repair. When you see that structure clearly, the pattern stops feeling mystical and starts feeling mechanical. I call that mechanism the law of energy substitution. The name is blunt on purpose. It describes a repeated trade: feeling for fixing, ritual for repair, simulation for solution. Every time someone trades a concrete step for an energetic practice alone, they teach their nervous system to accept the sensation instead of the outcome. That teaching compounds. The process is simple to map. A stimulus appears. This might be a late notice, a job offer, a client asking for rates. The mind interprets the stimulus through a story. The story often contains moral meaning about money. The interpretation births an emotion: anxiety, shame, righteous indignation. That emotion calls for relief. The reflex is to soothe with a ritual or narrative. The ritual feels good. The feeling becomes a substitute for the work the situation required. The result is unchanged or worse. This is not metaphysical speculation. It is psychological economics. The brain aims to reduce negative effect quickly. Rituals are efficient effect reducers. Visualization, breathwork, shopping for the right tool, they reduce stress now. The brain receives immediate feedback, relief. So it repeats the behavior. The brain does not care whether the behavior paid the rent. It cares about efficient relief. Over time, the habit architecture of the person reshapes toward relief first solutions. That is the first practical truth. The substitution is rewarded inside your skull. The second practical truth is social reinforcement. Spiritual scenes often valorize the interior response. Saying, "I surrendered," gains approval. Publishing a moon ritual photo attracts likes. The community often rewards the posture, not the profit and loss statement. External applause layers onto internal reward. The loop accelerates. To see how the law plays out, follow a tiny decision. You get a notification that a client will pay late. 2 routes appear. 1. You call or email, renegotiate terms, invoice again. 2. You light a candle, journal an affirmation, and decide the universe is aligning. The candle path gives immediate comfort. The invoice path is awkward and stressful. Comfort wins. This micro-choice, repeated, yields months of unpaid invoices. The law also explains why people who are busy are not always productive. Rituals can be time-consuming. Long meditations, multiple rituals, buying course after course. These are not inactivity. They are activity that produces inner motion without external traction. Effort without direction still consumes energy. The person looks busy and evolved. Their bank account tells a different story. It helps to map the emotional shortcuts that fuel substitution. I see 4 common shortcuts. First is moralization. To care about money is low. That makes action feel like betrayal. Second is perfectionism. I must wait for absolute clarity to act. That postpones any messy implementation. Third is object dependence. The right tool will do it. That externalizes responsibility to objects. Fourth is decoding paralysis. I need the sign. That outsources timing to chance. Each shortcut disguises a single fear. The fear of doing something imperfect and being exposed. When fear sits at the center, the mind privileges concealment. Rituals are concealment dressed as devotion. They hide the messy facts. They let a person keep the identity of the pure one while the ledger goes red. Identity protection is powerful. People will bend reality to protect a self-image. The law of energy substitution runs on that fuel. Now consider how the universe, as metaphor, responds. Call it mirror if you like. The practical point is this. The world responds to repeated behavior patterns. If you habitually choose rituals over difficult she'd photograph altars, price minimal offerings, and tag colleagues to validate her alignment. Her feed suggested readiness. Her bank accounts showed a different story. She told herself she was building magnetic momentum. What she built was a calendar of images and no invoices. The law of energy substitution had trained her to feel accomplished without delivering results. Another client, Daniel, believed signs would direct his job changes. He refused administrative roles because they felt lower vibration. He told himself that being available to the universe required not chasing paychecks. He waited for a sign. Years passed. When opportunity finally required practical skills he had avoided, he had none. The world mirrored back what his choices produced. Fewer options. Here is a piece most people miss. Substitution is not always lazy. It can be industrious. The person can be intensely active. They can craft rituals, lead circles, design courses. Productivity is not the same as traction. The law of energy substitution separates the two. It lets you be industrious at inner work and a nerd about outer work. The result is a life of motion without net gain. Naming the law gives you power. When you can hear the internal sentence, "I will feel better if I light the candle," you can interrupt it. You can ask, what measurable step would make a difference right now? You can practice choosing the awkward action. Practice rewrites habit loops. It rewires reward mapping. There is a social wrinkle that deepens the law's effect. Many spiritual scenes penalize transparency about struggle. Admitting poor finances threatens status. So people perform alignment publicly and conceal anxiety privately. This split creates shame. Shame reinforces ritual. Ritual soothes shame briefly. The loop tightens. The law of energy substitution is thus held in place by culture, not just cognition. Finally, understand that substitution can masquerade as spirituality. The language is the key camouflage. Words like surrender, alignment, trust sound noble. They are not wrong in themselves. The problem arises when those words become prescriptions that replace work. Surrender used as an excuse to avoid negotiation is not spiritual maturity. It is avoidance with a prettier name. If you have followed me this far, you now see the mechanism. You can see why a room full of candles does not equal a paid invoice. You can see why a feed full of affirmations does not equal sustainable income. Understanding the law exposes the mistake without shaming it. It gives a tactical question to ask. Where have I substituted feeling for fixing? Name it, then act. Next, I will show how that law turns into a loop. I will take the mechanism and run it in practical situations. You will see the 4-step cycle of self-sabotage in motion. I will map it across common scenes: a late notice, a job offer, and an entrepreneurial dream. Seeing the loop will make the next move obvious. Stay with me. The loop will feel familiar. The law of energy substitution becomes destructive through repetition. It settles into a loop. I describe that loop as 4 steps. The steps are simple but contagious. Step 1 is anxiety. Step 2 is ritual. Step 3 is relief. Step 4 is stagnation. Repeat. Repeat again. The loop trains the mind to prioritize relief over repair. Let me walk you into a morning where the loop runs unchecked. You wake to an email and invoice unpaid for 60 days. Your chest tightens. That anxiety is the signal. It should lead to one of 2 modes: problem solving or avoidance. Instead, you reach for the ritual. You Google prosperity rituals and choose a guided visualization that promises abundance. You spend 30 minutes on the cushion. You feel better. The body relaxes. You tell yourself you aligned. The invoice remains unpaid. This is the microeconomy of the cycle. The ritual buys time. It buys a reprieve from discomfort. It also buys inertia. Because you feel momentarily safe, you delay the hard call to the client. You might blame timing or the client's vibration, or that you are waiting for the right moment. Those explanations keep the loop comfortable. The loop is efficient in maintaining identity. People inside it trade accountability for virtue. They can keep the story that they are spiritually evolved while their life narrows. If someone criticizes them for not invoicing, they point to their ritual practice. I trust the timing, they say. The reply placates critics and preserves self-image. The loop protects the identity. I will now show the loop in 3 different life contexts. The first is the basic cash flow event. The second is opportunity avoidance. The third is entrepreneurial stagnation. Each scenario exposes the same 4-step cycle wearing different clothes. In the cash flow event, imagine Anna. She is a healer who depends on session fees. An expense arrives, the roof leaks. She feels panic. She lights a candle and records a money magnet reel. Her followers praise her. She feels seen. She postpones calling a contractor for a quote. The leak widens. Repair costs escalate. The ritual has not fixed the leak. It only bought psychological space. Months later, Anna takes a loan to pay the bill. Interest compounds. Her emotional economy crashes. The loop scaled the problem. In the opportunity avoidance scene, consider Marco. He is invited to co-design a program that would require administrative work. Marco despises administration. He tells a story. My gifts are for healing, not spreadsheets. That is the moralization shortcut. He consults his circle and gets spiritual validation for the refusal. He avoids the role. Later he watches someone else run the project and become financially stable. Marco's refusal preserved his purity but cost him future skill. The loop favored identity over growth. The entrepreneurial stagnation example is the most insidious. Take Leah. She dreams of launching a course. She designs a ritual for each moon cycle. She invests in tools to create the perfect brand aesthetic. Each ritual session produces clarity and emotion. She continuously tweaks the product, waiting for a final alignment. Meanwhile, no launch dates are set. 2 years pass. Leah adores her rituals and her Instagram. She has no customers. The loop turned momentum into perpetual rehearsal. Notice a pattern across these cases. The initial signal is always solvable with a small, concrete action. A phone call, a proposal, a simple product test. Instead, the person substitutes ritual. Ritual soothes. The person learns that soothing is an acceptable completion. This is the heart of the loop. The brain's reward system has been hijacked by immediate relief. How does the loop justify itself internally? It uses selective evidence. After a ritual, the person notices minor coincidences. A friendly message. A brief spike in engagement. These are interpreted as validation. The brain mistakes correlation for causation. A small random good event after a ritual becomes proof of alignment. The person doubles down. The loop tightens. There is also a social dynamic that masquerades as proof. In many circles, public ritual is social capital. If you show your process, you gain approval. Approval functions as feedback. The person begins to mistake social approval for market validation. Likes do not equal paid clients, but they feel similar emotionally. The loop transforms applause into substitute currency. The loop's reinforcement schedule is predictable. Short-term wins follow rituals irregularly. That irregular reinforcement pattern is a powerful behavioral glue. Think of slot machines. You do not need a consistent reward to keep pulling the lever. Occasional hits are enough. Rituals sometimes deliver small wins in email, an opportunity, a momentary calm. Those occasional hits keep the person hooked. Now I want to be specific about the psychological mechanics inside the loop. There are 3 internal moves that sustain it. First, avoidance via narrative. The person tells themselves a story that justifies an action. Second, substitute action. The person performs energy practices instead of transactional work. Third, internal validation. The person rewards themselves emotionally for the practice. The 3 moves reinforce one another until the loop gains momentum. Those internal moves are visible when you listen to client language. I am allowing the universe to choose for me. I do not want to push. I'm waiting for the signal. Each sentence is a loaded defense. It sounds spiritual. Functionally, It is permission. Permission to avoid. Permission to. Second, the intervention must shift reward mapping. The rule forced a new type of immediate reward: social and financial feedback from service. That new reward competed with ritual-induced comfort and eventually outweighed it. Interrupting the loop requires 3 tactical moves. 1. Identify the exact substitution you perform when anxious. Name it. 2. Create a one-to-one trade. For each ritual, require a measurable action within 24 hours. 3. Make immediate feedback available. Charge a tiny fee. Send an invoice. Track the result. The loop subsists on delay and ambiguity. Immediate feedback collapses its space. There is a moral point here I will not soften. You are responsible for the choices you make about your attention. The universe mirrors those choices. Saying, "I trust the universe," while never demonstrating reliability, is hypocrisy, not faith. I say this to be useful, not to shame. Recognizing responsibility is liberating because it gives you a lever. If you are recognizing this loop in yourself, here is a practical micro-test. Today, pick one anxiety about money and perform one concrete action in response. Not a ritual, not a prayer, a phone call, an invoice, a short email. Make it measurable and time-bound. Mark the result. That small act is the beginning of reweighting your nervous system away from relief-first strategies. In the next section, I will show where the loop breaks. I will describe the point of rupture, the crisis that forces either collapse or awakening. You will see how the same pattern that protected identity can also lead to a painful but liberating choice. That choice leads into reprogramming. It is ugly and necessary. Keep listening. The loop does not always break gently. Often it ends in rupture. That rupture is the point of breaking I call the tipping moment. It arrives as a shock, a sequence of shocks, or a slow accumulation that finally becomes unbearable. The experience is visceral. Shame deepens. You can no longer hide behind candles or social proof. The ledger has consequences. I want to be blunt about the shape of the tipping moment. It usually has 3 elements. 1. A singular event that cannot be soothed by ritual alone. A notice of eviction. A major medical bill. A family ultimatum. 2. A cognitive collapse where appeals to alignment stop making sense. The old story that saved you no longer explains facts. 3. A moral confrontation with your own choices. You are forced to admit that feeling good was not the same as acting well. Consider the client I call Marcus. He waited for signs for years. He lost roles that required the very administrative competence he refused to practice. The tipping moment for him was not one dramatic failure. It was a slow attrition of opportunity. One day he looked at his CV and saw a void where growth should have been. That sight felt like a betrayal by the life he had claimed. Marcus's tipping moment produced an ugly clarity. He set a rule. Test each perceived sign within 7 days. That tiny discipline saved him. It was a painful reorientation. Other tipping moments are public and humiliating. A client named Nina got a summons because she had 2 years of unpaid invoices. She had performed every prosperity ritual and kept a luminous feed. The summons forced her to face debts she had otherwise narrated away. She had to call her landlord. She had to apologize to patrons. The rituals did not help, but the summons yielded a different gift: raw data. Numbers do not lie. They provide a brutal form of truth that rituals cannot soften. The tipping moment can also be catalytic. When the shock lands, people split. Some deepen the ritual. They double down on identity protection. They retreat into spiritual communities that validate their discomfort. Others pivot. They reconcile spiritual practice with mundane tasks. They create hybrid rituals that pair alignment with action. The pivot is not mystical. It is pragmatic. It is choosing to use ritual as primer, not as replacement. What changes when a person pivots? The first internal change is a redefinition of surrender. Previously, surrender meant waiting and trusting the universe to fix external problems. Now surrender means accepting responsibility first and then letting go of attachment to outcomes. It flips the internal grammar. Surrender becomes a discipline that includes action. This is not a compromise with spirit. It is stewardship. The second change is a re-engineering of habit loops. The person introduces a new pairing. For every ritual, an action. For every prayer or visualization, a corresponding invoice, proposal, or exercise. This pairing retrains the nervous system. Now the reward is not only inner calm. The reward includes accountability and measurable consequence. Pleasure and competence begin to co-occur. I want to emphasize a subtle psychological shift here. Many people resist pairing because it feels like profaning the sacred. They fear their spiritual practice will be tainted by administration. This is a false dichotomy. Sacredness does not require impracticality. You can honor your practice and honor your obligations. In fact, honoring obligations is a high form of respect for the gifts you claim to have. Practical tactics at the tipping moment matter. Begin with triage. Face the numbers without moral commentary. Open your bank statement. List the overdue invoices. Call one debtor. Make a payment plan. These actions are not grand. They are procedural. They are the acts that dissolve shame into competence. Shame vanishes faster when met by small, efficacious actions. Another tactic is naming the habit publicly. I ask clients to tell one friend the truth about their finances. This is not for sympathy. It is for accountability. Social truth collapses secrecy. It weakens the armor that sustains substitution. When you say, I have been avoiding my ledger, you remove one of the loop's pillars, concealment. There is a spiritual dimension in the tipping moment that deserves grace. The breakdown is painful because it forces egoic realignment. The identity that once provided meaning, I am beyond money, must either adapt or dissolve. That grief is real. It needs acknowledgement. I never tell someone to abandon their values. I ask them to interrogate how those values are being used as avoidance. That interrogation is an act of care. Let me offer a map of choices in the tipping moment. Option 1 is retreat. Deepen ritual, seek validation, avoid structural change. Option 2 is pivot. Accept responsibility, design paired actions, test results. Option 3 is collapse. Do nothing and let consequences accumulate until external systems impose change. The pivot is the only option that integrates both spirit and matter. I want to make the pivot concrete with a method I use with clients at this stage. I call it the 21-day accountability bridge. The bridge pairs daily energy practice with a daily micro-action tied to money. The micro-actions are tiny. Send one invoice, draft one proposal paragraph, call one potential venue. The energy practice remains sacred. The difference is that each practice must be followed by a concrete move. The rule is strict. No practice without action. This creates a discipline that reshapes identity. The 21-day bridge is effective because it addresses 3 obstacles at once. It diminishes shame by producing results. It replaces avoidance with micro-habits. It retrains reward systems so that internal relief and external execution are linked. People report that after 3 weeks, they feel less scattered and more credible. The work is boring sometimes. It is also liberating. There is resistance worth anticipating. Expect the internal critic to object. Expect friends to call you too material. Expect your old rituals to feel abandoned. These are signs you are doing something different. The critic often speaks from fear of competence, fear of being ordinary. Meet the critic with curiosity, not capitulation. Ask, what is it afraid of losing? Often the answer is identity. Identity can be reshaped without annihilation. One of the hardest aspects of the tipping moment is relationship repair. When you have hidden financial instability, trust erodes. Partners, family, and collaborators feel the strain. Repair requires transparency and concrete steps. It is not poetic. It is procedural. You cannot conjure trust with a visualization. You rebuild it by doing the boring work consistently. I will tell one final story that threads the tipping moment to a real wake up and recovery. It insists they are partners. Saying that aloud feels obvious. Doing it is disciplined work. The first move is a change of definition. Surrender stops meaning wait and hope. Surrender begins to mean take responsibility, then release attachment to the outcome. That flips the grammar of the inner life. It is small but seismic. When surrender includes work, the ritual loses its ability to be an excuse. I give people a single rule to start. For every energetic practice you do for prosperity, do one measurable material action in the same day. Not someday. Today. The material action is tiny and visible. A 5-minute email, an invoice, a price, a call to a contractor. Keep it small on purpose. Small wins stack. Small clarities beat grand gestures. We test the rule in a 21-day bridge. 21 days is short enough to commit and long enough to shift habit. The bridge pairs daily energy practice with daily micro-action. I ask clients to journal both halves. The energy entry is brief. What ritual? What felt? The material entry is precise. What action? Timestamp. Result. This is the skeleton that trains the nervous system. Let me walk you through the 21 days in a practical way. Week 1 is about noticing. Day 1 might be, I meditated for 15 minutes, and then I sent one overdue invoice. Day 2, I visualized more clients, and then I drafted 2 paragraphs of an outreach email. Week 1 is clumsy. Expect shame. Expect the critic to claim this is too material. That voice is the old pattern speaking. Notice it. Do the action anyway. Week 2 scales faith into competence. The actions become small rituals themselves. Sending an invoice produces a tiny dopamine hit that is different from the ritual hit. It is external. It has consequence. You will begin to hunger for that different, cleaner reward. This is not abandonment of spirit. It is rebalancing reward mapping. Week 3 is where the habit consolidates. Patterns that previously looped on soothing begin to require an external check. You will find it easier to call a debtor after a 45-second grounding practice. You'll notice your attention moves toward results. Not always, but enough times to begin to retrain expectation. I give clients strict rules about the material actions. They must be measurable, time-bound, and public in a small way. Measurable means an invoice sent, an answer requested, a deadline set. Time-bound means within 24 hours. Public means one person knows you did it. Public accountability destroys the secrecy that fuels substitution. Resistance shows in 3 predictable forms. First, bargaining. I'll do the action tomorrow. Second, moralization. Doing business is so low vibration. Third, distraction. Acquiring new rituals to avoid the work. I instruct a simple countermeasure. When any of those arise, record them in the journal, then do a 5-minute service action. Give your skill away for 30 minutes. That is the awkward rule I used with Sophia. Sophia is one of the stories I repeat because it is useful. She loved tools and rituals. Her studio looked like a boutique of abundance. She had been buying supplies, and her bank account tightened. Each time she considered contacting a potential venue to offer a workshop, she lit a candle and told herself she was aligning. The loop continued. We made a rule. Every time Sophia wanted to buy a new tool or light another candle to soothe purchase guilt, she had to offer 30 minutes of her actual practice to someone for free and write down whether they would have paid for it. At first she did it grudgingly. She feared exposure. The free sessions were ordinary and messy. People asked to pay. She charged a small fee for a subsequent workshop, and the energy around finances looked different. The purchases did not vanish, but her relationship to them changed. The ritual no longer served as the primary reward. That is crucial. A new reward must compete with the old one. The dopamine from ritual is real. It is not evil, but it becomes dominant when it is the only readily available reward. So the bridge purposefully creates a competing reward system. The immediate feedback of an invoice or a paid session becomes the new, sober hit. I structure the micro actions into 5 buckets so clients never stall for lack of ideas. 1. Transactional. Send an invoice, request a deposit. 2. Visibility. Post one short client story with pricing. Send one direct message offering work. 3. Market testing. Offer a free 15-minute consult to 5 people and measure interest. 4. Skill growth. 45 minutes of targeted learning directly tied to income. 5. Triage. Call a creditor, propose a payment plan. Each day pick one. No spiritual bypass allowed. The day-to-day practice is tiresome sometimes. That is the point. Growth requires boring repetition. The 21 days are boring by design. Clients often ask for a spiritual upgrade that will feel rich instantly. There is none. What there is a different wiring. You will feel the old rituals rush to reclaim you. They will offer prettier, easier substitutes. Expect that. Name it. Choose again. Measurement matters. At the end of each week, I ask 2 simple questions. What changed in my inner weather? And what changed in my ledger? Inner weather refers to shame, numbness, scatteredness, or clarity. Ledger means invoices, payments, offers. Both answers are data. The ledger is brutal but honest. It will not flatter your identity. It will correct your map. I also train clients to reframe coincidences. In the loop, small coincidences after rituals become evidence and strengthen the habit. In the bridge, coincidences are simply occurrences. If you send an invoice and a client pays the same day, that's feedback. Celebrate it, but do not confuse it with confirmation of metaphysical purity. It is evidence of action. The distinction matters because one yields responsibility and the other yields excuses. Companion to the 21-day rule is language work. I ask people to revise 3 sentences they use often. The aim is to cut permission phrases. Replace "I'm trusting the universe" with "I am taking one step and then I will let go of the outcome." Replace "I am waiting for the right timing" with "I will test timing with a 7-day window." Replace "I don't want to push" with "I will be firm in my boundaries today." These are surgical edits. They change the nervous system. You will need allies. Accountability is social. I rarely let clients do the bridge alone. I encourage them to name one person who will receive a weekly check-in. It is not for support. It is for accountability. Say to the person, "I will message you each Friday with 3 facts. Rituals done, actions done, results." Social truth collapses secrecy. It disarms the internal justification machine. Expect relational friction. When you begin to prioritize action over identity protection, people will notice. Some friends will unlatch compassion and switch into critique. Others will feel threatened. That is a test. If a friendship exists primarily to protect an identity that avoids responsibility, that friendship will strain. That strain is data, not condemnation. It reveals where your life has been sustained by performance rather than competence. There are tactical details that sound mundane but matter. Use a small spreadsheet. Track date, energy practice, material action, time spent, outcome. At the end of the 21 days, plot 2 curves, frequency of rituals and frequency of material actions. If rituals still outnumber actions by 2 to 1, your nervous system has not shifted. Repeat the bridge. There is no shame in repetition. There is mastery. One more trick I use is the 2-minute rule. If a task related to money or clients will take 2 minutes or less, do it immediately. It interrupts avoidance autopilot. That 2-minute discipline cuts the most trivial layers of procrastination where ritual finds room to breathe. The bridge is not a cure. It is a retraining protocol. Old patterns reappear in new garments. A client will sometimes replace a money ritual with a new identity ritual, telling everyone about the new path while not actually doing invoices. Public ritual flips the same coin. The bridge anticipates that and demands private, measurable actions as the true currency. The practice scales. After the 21 days, people either feel lighter or more exposed. Both are progress. Lighter means competence has arrived. Exposed means the old armor is gone. They do not fall from a blue sky as miracles. They arrive because you are now visible in ways that matter. You pitch because you have something pitchable. You follow up because you have a habit of following up. The universe does not magically shower you with abundance. People do. Systems do. Your new pattern aligns you with both. I want to give you 2 stories to make this concrete. Marcus is the man who used to wait for signs. He had talent and a sprawling statement of purpose. He would spend afternoons decoding meanings and coincidences. He missed deadlines. When the tipping moment arrived, he lost a grant because of delayed paperwork. He chose pivot. Marcus set a rule. Every sign required a 7-day test. No more indefinite waiting. He committed to 7-day sprints where he would take one material action in response to any perceived sign. The effect was immediate. Opportunities that had previously passed him by now turned into small contracts because he responded within the window. Marcus did not become rich overnight. He became reliable. The economy of people responds to reliability. The second story is Nina. She got a summons for unpaid invoices while keeping an effervescent feed of abundance. The humiliating legal notice forced her to reconcile script with ledger. She chose repair. Nina picked up the phone and apologized to clients. She negotiated payment plans. She offered a small new service at a low introductory rate and delivered it consistently for 2 months. Trust, once fractured, rebuilt slowly. Payments resumed. Her social media fans did not become customers because of captions. They became customers because she offered something clear, priced, and delivered. The narrative of being spiritual and pure did not pay rent. The practice of offering value did. These are not feel-good rags to riches stories. They are slow adjustments in the way a person orients to the world. There is no magic map. The only magic is practice. The future that opens after the bridge is mundane and believable. It is built from sequences of choices that prefer accountability over identity protection. You will notice fewer catastrophes. Not because the universe turned kinder, because you no longer postpone small triage acts until they become catastrophes. You call the contractor early. You negotiate payments early. You invoice early. You test offers early. Prevention replaces drama. There is another shift in perception. You learn to distinguish validation from market feedback. Likes and applause still feel good. They no longer substitute for payment. People who only gave you warmth in the old pattern may remain friends. Some will quietly withdraw. That is normal. When your priorities change, the network reshuffles. It is part of maturation. Your internal metrics change. Instead of asking, "Am I aligned?" you ask, "What small test can I run today?" Alignment becomes experiment, not proof. This is the difference between a religion of feeling and a discipline of evidence. The discipline is humble. It does not glamorize suffering. It removes the mystique from avoidance. There are microeconomies that also reconfigure. When you begin to charge tiny fees or ask for commitments, you change who comes to you. People who want free miracles remain free to look elsewhere. People willing to invest in solutions arrive. This is a market effect, not spiritual favoritism. You will notice that your offers refine themselves simply because you are forced to be clear about what you provide. Emotionally, life becomes steadier. Shame recedes faster when met with action. Shame is a state that amplifies avoidance. Action, even awkward action, collapses shame. In my work, I see clients who once hid invoices now publishing their rates confidently. That confidence is not vanity. It is the competence that grows from doing the work. The future alternative also contains friction. The old pattern fights back. You will get nostalgic for the safety of soothing rituals. Old friends will praise your previous purity and offer praise as if it were virtue. Praise can be a trap. It is easier to receive applause than to be consistent. I advise clients to name praise as what it is and to test whether praise asks them to return to old patterns. Often it does. Scaling the new pattern requires systems. The 21-day bridge is a primer. The next level is institutionalizing micro-actions. Set calendar blocks for transactional work. Create templates for invoices. Build a follow-up protocol for prospects. These are dull but liberating. They create momentum that rituals cannot. I want to be clear about what does not happen. Your entire life will not instantly transform into abundance. You will not wake up wealthy because you stopped substituting ritual for action, but you will build a track record. The world responds to track records. People refer you because you deliver. Systems pay you because you are reliable. You become interesting to collaborators because you can meet deadlines. There is also a subtler gain. Your spiritual practice, freed from being a substitute, deepens. The paradox is that when rituals are no longer shields, they become sharper instruments. A 30-second breath before a call makes the call better. A short centering before pricing allows clarity. When ritual is a primer, it does what it promises. It prepares you to act from alignment. Let me describe a typical month when the new pattern holds. Week 1. Outreach and small offers. 2 invoices sent. 1 new client. Week 2. A response to an idea. A quick test that fails and is learned from. An adjustment in price. Week 3. A paid workshop or a new product that yields a small but recurring fee. Week 4. Bookkeeping and relationship repair. Small predictable rhythms replace dramatic hope. Over months, these rhythms compound. Vulnerability grows, but it is strategic. You become willing to show the work. You publish a failed offer and then publish what you learned. That honesty attracts collaborators and actual customers. It is the opposite of curated perfection. It is messy. It is credible. One practical habit I recommend is the monthly accountability review. At the end of each month, answer 3 questions. What did I ship? What paid me? What did I learn? Keep the answers short. Share them with your accountability person. Over time, you will see patterns and be able to change investment of attention accordingly. Another habit is price practice. Regularly test prices in small increments. Most people undercharge because they avoid discomfort. Price tests re-educate both you and your market. They also teach you to decouple worth from virtue. Charging is not unspiritual. It is stewardship. I must warn you about a common relapse. People sometimes flip the pattern into hypermateriality. They abandon ritual entirely and become technicians of income. That is not the goal. The goal is integration. Energy without execution was the old error. Execution without heart is a new error. The work is to hold both. If you are wondering whether this truly changes how the universe behaves, here is my practical answer. Yes, but not magically. The universe begins to answer the person who is clearly moving. When you commit to action, you create points of contact. People meet you at those points. Systems like banks, venues, and platforms respond. Energy aligns not through mystical favor, but through the increase in your signal clarity. At some point, you will notice a different internal pleasure. It is not the fragile high of being seen. It is the quieter satisfaction of building something that works. It is less cinematic. It is more durable. It is the difference between applause and competence. If you are tracking with me, the next question is inevitable. What does responsibility mean in relationships and money? How do you repair trust? How do you keep rituals without letting them soften accountability? Those are the exact questions I will answer in the final section. There I will mirror you back into your life and give a precise, immediate next step you can do today. Keep listening. The work ahead is precise, small, and human. I will be blunt. This is not a pep talk. It is an invitation to face a simple fact. The universe does not work for you. It works through you. That sentence is easy to say and hard to live. Saying it forces 2 hard admissions. 1. You have been treating feeling good as a substitute for doing good. 2. You are responsible for the attention you give. Where are you in the arc I described? Are you still comforted by rituals that leave the ledger unchanged? Or have you started trading ritual for trial and error? You may be somewhere in the middle. Good. Middle is where change begins. It is manageable. Here is a closing diagnosis. People who believe everything is energy but expect the universe to do the heavy lifting. It keeps your ritual intact, but refuses to let ritual be the end point. You will face critics. Some will call you too material or accuse you of abandoning spirit. Expect this. You will also face your internal critic telling you to keep the fantasy. That critic is an old friend disguised as conscience. Ask it what it fears. Usually the fear is competence. Competence removes the safety of an identity built on being morally superior to practical people. That loss feels like betrayal. Name it. Keep moving. Repair work is procedural. If you have hidden financial problems, fix them with small rules. Make a list of overdue items. Prioritize one call. Make one payment arrangement. Tell one person the truth. Do not make it a performance. Do it because truth reduces shame quickly. Repairs compound faster than you think. If you want to calibrate your spiritual life with your material life, adopt one rule. For every ritual, a corresponding fiduciary act. Fiduciary means something you would be accountable for if someone you trust asked. It has to matter to another person. This changes the internal logic. Ritual becomes a primer for care. There is a moral dimension here I will not soften. Responsibility is not a moral punishment. It is a lever. The person who says, "I trust the universe," while never doing small acts of competence is lying to themselves. The lie hurts them more than it ever harms the cosmos. If you want to be useful, stop proving a narrative about your purity and start proving you can steward what you are given. You may worry that such discipline is unspiritual. That is an old confusion. I have watched people become more generous when they began to pay attention. When income steadies, they give more, sponsor others, and hold longer-term commitments. Structure does not corrupt generosity. It magnifies it. Being responsible with your gift is perhaps the most spiritual act there is. Now some practical templates you can adopt immediately. Template 1. The 24-hour test. When you get an impulse ritual, idea, or sign, choose one material action to take within 24 hours. Log the result. Template 2. The weekly ledger review. At the same time each week, list 3 numbers: invoices outstanding, payments received, and proposals sent. Template 3. The public repair. Tell one person the truth about your finances. Ask them not for sympathy, but for help holding you accountable. These templates are intentionally small. They are boring. Boredom is a filter. It weeds out virtues signaling and leaves work. The people who stay boring get results. I promised 2 transformation stories earlier. Here is a last one that ties the arc together. Leah, who had dreamed of launching a course, spent years polishing aesthetics and waiting for final alignment. When the tipping point arrived, she realized 2 years had passed with no launch. She chose the bridge. Leah's first 21-day practice had a humiliating moment. Her offer flopped. A handful of people enrolled at a low price. She felt exposure. Instead of retreating, she iterated. She simplified the module, tightened the copy, and asked 5 people what they wanted. The second round sold out at twice the price. Leah did not suddenly become a guru. She became a practitioner of small experiments. Her Instagram remained pretty, but the account started to reflect actual clients. Her spiritual language did not disappear. It just stopped being an explanation for procrastination. You do not need a dramatic conversion to change. You need a new feedback loop. That feedback loop is built from tiny acts of accountability and honest measurement. It will humble you. It will also free you. I will end with a compact mirror. Read these sentences and answer honestly. Have you used ritual to soften a decision you feared making? Do you avoid looking at numbers because they might contradict your story? When a small opportunity appears, do you test it within 7 days, or do you wait for a sign? If any of those ring true, choose one micro step for today. Make one call. Send one invoice. List one expense and one possible reduction. Make the action visible to another person. That single act begins the shift. Finally, a brief practical prompt you can use right now. Sit for 2 minutes. Breathe. Ask quietly, what is the smallest useful thing I can do in the next 24 hours to test my intention? Write it down. Do it. Report the result to one person. Keep the loop. Smallness is not defeat. It is the architecture of freedom. Thank you for listening this far. If this landed with you, share one sentence in the comments about the small step you will take today and where you are from. I read them. The work we do with attention changes the conversation between our inner life and the outer world. Begin with a single actionable test. Do not let the ritual be the last thing you do.